Now look at Part 1.
You will hear a telephone conversation between two people about a flat. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 6.
Hello, this is Simon Marshall. I spoke to you the other day about renting flat 3A.
Oh, yes. Hello, Simon. What can I do for you?
Well, there are a few health and safety things I'd like to run through if that's okay.
Yes, fine.
Right, well, the first thing, bearing in mind it's quite an old house, is whether there's any damp. I'm thinking here of the exterior walls and the floor.
Well, I've never known any problems with damp there. It was all right last time I checked, certainly, though that was before the recent wet weather. I'd better have another look and get back to you on that.
OK. Now, the next thing is the gas supply. Do you have a safety certificate? A current one, that is?
We do. All the gas appliances have been checked by a registered engineer.
Yes, I was going to ask about that. When did they actually do the inspection?
Let me think. They sent an engineer to check something early last year, but no, that wasn't the inspection. Oh, I remember now, it was in the spring. In fact, I've got the certificate here somewhere. Yes, that's it. March 22nd, so it's just over 5 months ago.
And the electricity, when was the last time all the wiring was inspected? I know it doesn't have to be checked as often as the gas, but it's still important, especially in older properties.
As it happens, we had an electrician in when we redecorated flat 3A. If he looked at everything then, he would have charged us for it. I'll find the bill and check it if you like.
Fine. And when was that?
The decorators finished just before Easter, so that would be about 18 months ago.
Just one more point on the electrics. Are there enough plug sockets in the flat?
It depends what you mean by enough, really.
Well, I've got quite a lot of electrical things. Computer, radio, lamps, kitchen appliances and so on, and I'm wondering whether I could plug them all in without having cables trailing all over the place.
I think there's one per room. That's fairly normal in older properties.
I'll take that as a no then.
All right.
Now, another safety point. Is there a smoke alarm?
Yes, there's one in the kitchen.
And is it in good working order?
I'll have to try it out and let you know.
Right. Now, you mentioned the previous tenants. Do they, or anyone else who's lived in the flat, still have keys to the door?
We're very strict about that. Everyone has to hand back the keys when they leave, or we don't return the deposit. And those in 3A have always done so.
Now listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
OK. Now, there are a few other practical details. Firstly, you mentioned a room where people can leave things like suitcases and bags and things. Where exactly is that? Is it next to 3A, which I take it is on the third floor?
Well, the apartment's on the third, yes, but the storeroom's a little way away, just past the second door to the right. Under the stairs, in fact.
But it's on the same floor, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Fine. Now, another thing I wanted to check is that there's hot water in the apartment.
Oh, yes. It runs off the central heating. That was installed back in the 70s, I think, so there's a permanent supply.
But is it really hot? Not just warm or lukewarm?
I suppose it depends what you mean by hot. But it's at a constant 60 degrees.
Oh, that sounds fine.
Yes, it used to be set at 55, but last year the tenants asked us to increase it, so we did.
Oh, I'm glad about that. OK, now can you tell me a bit about the yard and the garden? How big are they?
Well, the yard at the side of the house is about 20 square metres.
Oh, so there's room for my motorbike then? Actually, it's only a 50cc moped, but I like to keep it off the road at night.
Yes, there's more than enough space there, even with all the wheelie bins.
And the garden?
That's much bigger, about 150 square metres.
Who looks after it, by the way?
Old Mr. Collins. He's almost 90, but he's out there every day.
And the last point, the TV. What size screen is it?
It's 70 centimetres wide, I think. No, sorry, that was the old one. This one's 80. You can get 90-odd channels on it, so I'm told.
Really? So there's a satellite dish on the roof, is there?
No, it's cable TV here. It doesn't cost much between everyone, though.
That's very interesting. OK, thanks for your help. I'll be in touch again soon.
Thank you. Bye for now.
Bye.
That is the end of part 1. Now turns to part 2.
You will hear an extract from a talk about employment interviews. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 14. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 14.
Today I have with me Sandy Richardson of the local Workforce Center, and she'll be talking about that critical step towards the goal of employment, the interview. Sandy, what is an interview for, and what's the best way to approach it?
A job interview is simply a meeting between you and a potential employer to discuss your qualifications and see if there is a fit. The employer wants to verify what they know about you and talk about your qualifications. If you have been called for an interview, you can assume that the employer is interested in you. The employer has a need that you may be able to meet, so it's your goal to identify that need and convince the employer that you're the one for the job. As everyone knows, interviews can be stressful, but when you're well prepared, there's no reason to panic. Preparation is the key to success in a job search, and you can begin by collecting together all the documents you may need for the interview, such as extra copies of your resume, lists of references, and letters of recommendation. You could also take some work samples, selecting from what you have designed, drawn, or written, for instance. And make sure you have a pen and pad of paper for taking notes. The next step is to find out about the post. The more you know about the job, the employer, and the industry, the better prepared you will be to target your qualifications. always request a job description from the employer and research employer profiles at the Chamber of Commerce or local library. You could also try to network with people who work for the company or with employees of companies associated with it. The next step is to match your qualifications to the requirements of the job. A good approach is to write out your qualifications along with the job requirements. Think about some standard interview questions and how you might respond. Most questions are designed to find out more about you, your qualifications, or to test your reactions in a given situation. If you don't have any experience or skills in a required area, think about how you might compensate for those deficiencies.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 15 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 15 to 20.
During an interview, it's important that you be yourself. Get a good night's sleep and plan your travel to be there in plenty of time so that you're not arriving out of breath with 30 seconds to spare. Don't, though, present yourself for the interview too early, 10 minutes at most. In the interview, listen carefully to each question asked. Take your time in responding and make sure your answers are positive. It's important to express a good attitude and show that you're willing to work, eager to learn, and are flexible. If you are unsure of a question, don't be afraid to ask for clarification. In fact, it's sometimes a good strategy to close a response with a question for the interviewer. In general, focus on your qualifications and look for opportunities to personalize the interview. Briefly answer questions with examples of how you responded in comparable situations, from either your life or previous job experiences. Something you should avoid are yes or no responses to questions, but don't dwell too long on non-job-related topics. Use caution if you are questioned about your salary requirements. The best strategy is to avoid the question until you have been offered a job. Questions about salary asked before there is a job offer are usually screening questions that may eliminate you from consideration, so be warned. On the other hand, it isn't inappropriate to show your enthusiasm if your first impressions of the interview and of the employer are good ones. So, if the job sounds like what you are looking for, say so. Keep in mind that the interview is not over when you are asked if you have any questions. Come prepared to ask a couple of specific questions that again show your knowledge and interest in the job. Close the interview in the same friendly, positive manner in which you started. When the interview is over, leave promptly. Don't overstay your time. Think about the interview and learn from the experience. Evaluate the success and failures. The more you learn from the interview, the easier the next one will become. You'll become much more confident. To close, here are a few more tips. First, maintain good eye contact throughout the interview and be aware of nonverbal body language. Second, dress a step above what you would wear on the job. Go to the hairdressers, have a shave, etc. Remember that your appearance is a key indicator of whether you have the right attitude, so it can pay to give some thought to how you look. And finally, don't be a clock watcher.
That is the end of part 2. Now turns to part 3.
You will hear two friends discussing a course they have just done. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 27. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 27.
Oh, Ben, I just remembered I never filled in that form for Nick.
Ah.
Did you do it?
The course feedback form?
Yes. If you want, we can do it together. I've got mine here.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's have a look then. What do we have to do?
Let's fill in the top first. Let's see. Course code.
It's communication in business.
Okay. Communication in business. I do know that, but what's the code?
CB16 something. CB162, isn't it?
That's it. Okay. And dates. When did we start? I remember my birthday's on May 4th, and it was the day after. It must have been May 5th.
Gosh, doesn't seem that long ago, does it?
No. And we finish at the end of this week on Friday, so that's July 15th.
16th.
Oh.
Monday was the 12th.
Yeah.
Right, that was the easy bit. Now, let's have a look. Please give your comments on the following aspects of the course. Okay, what's the first one? Oh, course organisation. What do you think?
Clear. It was, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think the organisation was clear. Okay, anything else for course organisation?
It was a good thing he gave us the course outline at the beginning in the first session. That was useful, so I'll put that down, shall I?
Yeah.
Now, going on to suggestions for improvement, one thing that wasn't so good, I think we could have done a bit more work at the beginning. I mean, at the beginning it seemed dead easy.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be really easy, and then all of a sudden in the second half of the course, we got a whole load of work.
Yeah.
Reading to do and essays and things.
Yeah, it'd be better if it was more even. Okay, now, course delivery. Does that mean teaching?
Yeah, I suppose so. Well, what I thought was really good on this course was the standard of teaching. Actually, I mean, some of the teachers were better than others, but the standard generally was fine. Much better than other courses I've been on.
Yeah, I agree. Let's put that then.
Okay.
What about suggestions for improvement?
I didn't think it was all that wonderful when we had great, long group discussion sessions that went on for hours and hours.
Right.
I don't mean we shouldn't have group discussions, just that they shouldn't go on too long.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 28 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 28 to 30.
Now, on to materials and equipment.
Oh, now, what was good about some sessions was the handouts.
Yes, I thought all the handouts were good, actually, and some were great, with website addresses and everything.
One problem, though, with materials was the key texts.
Yes, there just weren't enough copies on reserve in the library. And if you can't get the key text before the session, how are you supposed to do the reading?
Yeah.
And not enough computers. You have to wait ages to get one.
Okay, testing and evaluation. Well, I don't know. It's hard to say until we've got our written assignments back.
Oh, don't talk about it. I only got mine in yesterday. It was a real struggle. Oh, I hate to think what mark I'll get.
Yeah, but at least we've done the oral presentation. I thought that was good, the way I got my feedback really quickly.
Yes, it was. And I liked the way we knew what would be evaluated on. We knew the criteria, so we knew we had to think about clarity, organization, and so on.
Yeah, but I'm not so sure about the written work. One thing, I think, is that there's just too much. It's really stressful.
Oh, yes, I'd agree. And I don't see why they can't let us know the criteria they use for marking.
The written assignments, but he told us.
No, for the final exams.
Oh.
What are they looking for? What are the criteria? What makes a pass or a fail?
Yeah, I never thought of that. It'd be really useful.
Okay, any other comments?
I thought student support was excellent.
Yeah, me too. Okay, excellent. Other comments?
No, I can't think of anything else.
Nor me. Okay, so that's done. Thanks, Ben.
No, thank you.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
You will hear part of a lecture about the school calendar. Listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
So, having seen that the six-term system has passed the test of cost-effectiveness, we can move on to the educational aspects of this arrangement. Firstly, all the terms would be approximately the same length. Instead of terms up to 13 weeks, which we have now, there could be a repeating pattern of 7 weeks of term time plus 2 weeks of vacation. This would be repeated 6 times per year. How does this affect the effectiveness of the educational provision? The most noticeable result would be that the very long summer holiday would be reduced in length. This byproduct of the six-term system could be beneficial. There's plenty of evidence of huge learning loss by pupils during the summer holidays. By learning loss, we mean the amount that pupils forget or lose during a holiday break. Ashley carried out a number of analyses which showed this conclusively. He investigated 39 studies examining the effects of summer holidays on standardized test scores. His analyses indicated that summer learning loss equaled 2 weeks to 7 weeks of instruction. On average, children's test scores were 3 weeks lower than when they left school in the previous term. He also found differences in the learning loss effect according to subject. The subjects he analysed were reading, writing and maths, and he found that the effect was greatest in maths and reading. Furthermore, although all social groups experienced roughly similar learning loss in the field of maths, the studies found that disadvantaged children showed even greater losses in reading skills. So, the problem of learning loss in traditional schools is clear. However, the results of studies into the six-term system and learning loss are ambiguous. Marchmont found that pupils in six-term schools maintained their test scores after the shorter holiday period. This is certainly an improvement on the traditional system where, as we have seen, pupils perform worse after the summer break. Benson, however, found no differences between those in traditional schools and on the six-term schedule. It would seem reasonable that if long holidays result in learning loss, then shorter holidays should result in less learning loss. So we await the outcome of further studies. Historically, of course, everyone knows the reason for our system of 3 terms per year. In days when agriculture was of much greater importance in our working lives, it was essential that the children helped with the harvest. Later on, this changed, and more people moved into the towns. But then there was a new problem. Before air conditioning, it was very impractical to try to teach children in the summer months. Nowadays, that's no longer a barrier. One way of providing something different is the summer school. Here, there is a completely different kind of educational provision. Cooper and others investigated 93 summer schools and the results they achieved. They all had a positive effect on learning. Most summer schools, of course, have small classes, and class size was shown to have a positive effect. Additionally, summer school children usually benefit from a great deal of parental support, not least because payment of fees is involved, and this, as so often, was shown to produce very good outcomes. Results were most impressive, in maths in general.
That is the end of Part 4.